Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we will take a look at the oftentimes overlooked and forgotten part of Jircniv's plan to destroy Ainz Ooal Gown and his great tomb of Nazarick. But before we are doing so, let me thank my Patreons for supporting this channel. Also, if you want to support my channel without making any commitments, YouTube just enabled thanks for my channel, meaning if you want to give a one-time donation to any of my videos, you can do so via the YouTube thanks function. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching and have a nice... just kidding. After Jircniv's Imperial Guard, including one of the 4 Imperial Knights, the extra shield hero, got decimated by the arriving Dark Elf twins, emissaries of Ainz Ooal Gown himself, and after a considerable part of his palace got destroyed due to one of Mare's earthquakes, the negotiation between them began. And instead of simply despairing or even just hesitating, Jircniv, within mere hours of the twins' arrival, came up with a counter-strategy to what others might have considered an impossible, unconquerable force, which they were, but more of that later. During dinner, he noted that while Aura was very blonde and assertive, Mare, especially in comparison to his sister, was very meek and timid. He seemed like he had always been someone that others could easily influence and control, which led Jircniv to his first part of the counter-strategy. He wanted to sow discontent and treason within the ranks of the great tomb of Nazarick, and during the time of planning, the Empire was still independent, and elves were not people, but treated as a commodity, and Jircniv planned to exploit their suffering further by offering Mare, an elf himself, an opportunity to mend the pain of his fellow kin. All it would take is a minor transgression on the Dark Elf part, just the slightest of defiance, if not just indeed a loose interpretation of Ainz Ooal Gown's orders, all of course for the sake of the other elves. Of course, once Mare would in Jircniv's mind have transgressed just a little bit, all the Emperor now had to do was to threaten Mare not with his own authority and might, but with that of Ainz Ooal Gown himself. If the Dark Elf twin would refuse to do as Jircniv demanded, all he needed to do was to threaten Mare with the fact that he had already transgressed once, and that he would have to answer for his crimes to Ainz Ooal Gown himself, since Jircniv could now tell on him at any time. And so, bit by bit, he would gain control over Mare, and once he got a foot in the door of the Great Tomb, he then could use Mare to sow further discontent among the many denizens of Nazarick, by exploiting greed, ambition, personal vendettas, and relationship griefs. He wanted to effectively start a civil war within the Great Tomb when the time was right. Jircniv, after all, wasn't a fool. After witnessing how strong the Dark Elf twins were, he wasn't exactly keen on fighting them, but he wanted to make them fight another. Meanwhile, he would ask Lord Ainz himself to use his strongest spell, thereby illustrating just how dangerous this new enemy is, in order to forge a grand alliance against the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Essentially, Jircniv planned to do what happened to the 8 kings of Avarice. After all, it had been the civil war between them, and not the might of the dragons, that really destroyed their empire. And although diminished, all the dragons now needed to do after the civil war concluded in order to finish off their great enemy was to sweep in while the victor still licked its wounds in order to destroy them completely. Once the Great Tomb fights itself to almost absolute ruin, the Grand Alliance would come in, wipe out the remnants of the Great Tomb, and thus win against Ainz Ooal Gown and his emerging empire. But even this first half of Jircniv's plan failed spectacularly once he actually entered the Great Tomb and witnessed how Ainz Ooal Gown ruled, with an iron but seemingly fair and wise fist. Especially the gesture that Ainz used after practicing it in front of a mirror many times left an impression on him, which meant that he now had to realize that the Great Tomb can't be plunged into a civil war. And after the second half of his plan was smothered in his crib by Ainz Ooal Gown in the 10th novel, Jircniv had lost completely. And again, the strategy he wanted to employ was in and of itself brilliant, and it already, either by the machinations of the remaining Dragon Lords, or by the greed and envy of the 8 Greed Kings, had already worked once. But since Ainz Ooal Gown had been the only remaining player in Nazarick, and since he saw his NPCs as his dear children, and since the NPCs were, shalt here, just cover your ass now, always and eternal loyal, and unable to betray their overlord, Jircniv's strategy was doomed from the very start. But had, let's say, Touch Me and his arch-enemy Ainz Ooal been transported to the New World instead of just Ainz, then this failure of a strategy could have been very well the end of the Great Tomb, since not only the 2 players but also their NPCs, especially Sebastian and Demiurge, would behave extremely hostile to one another already, thus making it comparatively easy to start something once Jircniv becomes aware of their dynamic. But again, it's an A for effort. At least he tried. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Almighty Dio, Bad Guy Ye, Ben C, Chrissy, Sia, Death is Mercy, Dystopia II, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Haster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, Kratos, Chromius, Legendarius, Lelouch V. Britannia with a mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Matthew, Mr. Shoes, Michael R, Michael Y, O'Kill, Paddy Pantom, Primus 11, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rock Edsmesher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Venture Fanatic, Wave of Manga, Wilhelm, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.